Hey guys, it's been way too long. I thought I would be able to stream last Thursday before my trip, but I realized it wasn't realistic for the timing, and I really missed you guys. So I hope that doing this today with the non-garment items is appealing to you. But they're both free downloadable patterns. One is available now when you sign up for the newsletter. And the other, I am putting the finishing touches on. I like to sew a few before I make a pattern available. Even if it's free, excuse me, I would really like it to be working perfectly. And I'm hoping that I can also add some customizable items in there, like different pocket configurations, and that way you can kind of go, well, I don't really need this tall, long pocket. I can use two shorter ones, and they'll still fit in the same spot without any kind of alterations on your part. So, but first off, we're going to start off with some notions cases, which is a pattern that's available for free right now on the newsletter sign up. And they're pretty quick to sew once you get the hang of them. And I really love that it just uses so many little skills for very short periods of time. And you can really hone your binding skills with it. So it's a pretty low-key introduction to it. It doesn't have to fit you, right? So that's pretty splendid as well. So here's a bunch that I have here. You can just see how different, binding and fabric choices can be once you're picking them out. We have over the years opted to put like the main fabric on the front instead of the back, and then we went back to putting what we consider the lining fabric of the line on the front. And the reason we do that is because when you have your tools inside, it's obstructing the fabric, what it looks like. So we figure if you really wanted to see, the good fabric of that you picked out, I'm trying to do these right side up for you guys, then at least you get as much of the outer fabric as possible showing. But we've definitely seen people favor one or the other, and you can do either. But this also highlights how having a motif, like an image of something, how it fits on the case. So even though this is the lining fabric, it has a motif, and it's good to think about that when you're cutting out the front of your notions case, like how it will fit under the vinyl window, under the zipper here. It's not much, but you'd be surprised how often you center an image right at the top and then all of a sudden the eyeballs are covered, so you wouldn't want to do that. We like eyeballs, right? So I've got a bunch here cut out. I don't know if we'll do all of them because I want to start the closet organizer as well, which I know. Hi, Maria. How's it going? I have renamed from the wrapping paper organizer to the closet organizer because I realized this could be used for so many different things, And there's a lot of knitters that we interact with, so I know some of them would like to organize parts of their stash there if you don't mind it being out in the open and not zipped up tight somehow. So I also came up with all these combinations based on no thread changes, so you wouldn't have to worry about that, like watching me do that, because we're trying to get through a bit today. I'll do a few of these today at the beginning and a few of these on Saturday at the beginning, and then we'll do the closet organizer the first half today and the second half on Saturday. So hopefully I will have the pattern available by the end of that stream, and then you can make your own. I know that this has been great, doing the wrapping paper aspect of it, because it made me go through all of our stuff, which has gotten kind of crazy. Because when you get a gift, you actually save bits of wrapping paper here in the bags and the ribbon, and so sometimes it's just not always as tidy as when it came to you when you purchased it. So it was a great opportunity to be like, I am never going to use this bag, and donate it or use it for something else. And then also kind of hone what I really wanted to keep hold of. So, all right, so here's a look at the pattern for the notions case. It's just a 4-page download. There's no piecing of pattern pieces. They all fit right on the pages. There's line-by-line instructions, illustrated instructions, and if you buy it on the Chicken Boots website, you actually get a video to go with it. But you will not need that because you have me right here sewing it live for you. So. All right, so I've got these 5 fabric combinations, and I don't really care which ones we do first. I kind of want to do all of them. So I figured I'll just start with one. I lined up all my binding. That was kind of the hardest part, to be honest. Figuring out what binding I want. I want these accessible, but I don't want to knock them over. So let's see. We'll line them up here. How's that? I don't want to get any wrinkles because once you put this together, it would be pretty difficult to iron it without having potentially disastrous consequences with your vinyl. So I would heavily recommend you iron it before you put it together. I have a bunch of zippers here, and I have some cut vinyl pieces and stiffener pieces. This stiffener that we use is a lot like what you buy at the store called Peltex. I do not get the fusible version. I don't fuse it, and I don't like the way it looks when it's fused. So I just stick with this non-fusible. Ours is probably a little bit stiffer, but it still works really great. We see people make these all the time. So let's see. And also, just a side note, our kit was, or our pattern was designed for a kit that we actually offer for sale, which means the zipper that it comes with is a little bit wider than what you would get at the fabric store. And that means that I'll show you how to alter the pattern. It's really a subtle adjustment, so that if you're using a store-bought zipper, more like this width, you see the difference? You can just buy as many zippers as you want. You don't have to keep buying them from us. So that's the intent. Let's see, we have some sliders. You also don't have to put the slider on when you get the kit from us. And you'll see it's a little bit fussy. So we did it all for you. And then we sewed up the bottom so that you wouldn't have to worry about it. I'm going to do a few of them here. So how are you guys? It's been so long. And if you're new here, welcome. I'm Sarami. I always forget to introduce myself. It's like Jeremy with an S, so that helps for the pronouncement. And just so you know that if you want to chat and say hi, you need to do what YouTube, their version of like creating an account is called creating a channel. It doesn't mean you have to start creating videos. I don't know why they call it that, but if you want to say hi, and we really hope you do because it's really fun when people chat and interact and ask questions, you have to create a channel, and it's pretty easy, especially if you're already in the Google universe, you know. So, and then let's see, what else did I want to mention? I wanted to mention something else and I can't remember because I know a lot of people have questions about live streaming video. I'm still learning how to do it, but I do watch a lot of live streams. And I really enjoy it, and that's why I started doing it in the sewing world. I really liked how interactive it is and how people can just say, hey, how'd you do that? Or, wait, where do I get that? And then, you know, someone can answer, or someone in the chat will answer if the streamer misses it. And I really love that kind of community. It's really helpful because sometimes we just really want to be surrounded by people who are trying to figure it all out as well. I think I always am. I'm always learning. I went to my first sewing meetup this week. It's probably not considered like a sewing meetup, but it was like a monthly thing at my fabric store. And they're all mostly quilters, which was really awesome because I don't know anything. I mean, I know enough about quilting to know how much I don't know about quilting. And I'm not a quilter, and I just brought my scrappy little like quilt kit with me to sew the top, and I brought my home sewing machine, and I actually used my home sewing machine. I know my friend was like, have you ever used this before? I'm like, yes, of course I've used this before, but I just don't use it very often. I love my industrial machine. That's another thing I should mention. I'm using an industrial Juki. It's just a single needle straight stitch machine, but I try not to do anything on this that you can't do at home. I will say that it does have a little bit, it's a little more stout, so it does kind of help me, you know. You can cut the zipper, it doesn't matter, Maria. Like, these were already pre-cut, and look, they're a little too short. Can you see that? That's probably why they were in the bin. They were cut like probably a tad too short, and someone was like, I don't want to have to deal with these. Because after a while in production, what we started doing was we would just sew, like bind all the tops of our vinyl and then sew in a continuous line all the zipper to all of them, connecting them, and then just cut them apart because it uses less zipper overall if you're not having to snip off extra bits of the zipper. So we're obviously doing it in a production style here, but if you do cut your zipper, just make sure you do this, just a little quick stitch over each end. You will thank yourself later, especially if it's store-bought. Like if you got a store-bought zipper, I am not quite sure you can get that slider back on. Hi, Olivia. Oh, I know. It's what do you mean? It's so brave. Oh, yeah. Well, you know what? If you want to see what my zipper looks like, let me show you what it looks like. This is what the zipper looks like that I use. We call it the Beast. It's like got a center hole right here. And if this came off of here, it would be like a week-long project to untangle it. It's worse than yarn. I don't know why, but zipper is just really finicky. I actually have like a, you know those organizers for your garden hose that you mount to the wall? I have one of those for the black version. I just never bought one for the cream version. And then we just open it up, put it on there, and then peel off all the cardboard so it's all perforated. So that's what I use. And then we just cut it off like as we need it. So yeah, so you can buy, I think, zipper by the inch or maybe yard now at the fabric stores. I'm not quite sure. So I feel like I interrupted myself a long way there, but let me secure all these ends. Oh yeah, that's what I was gonna say. If you buy pre-made zippers at the fabric store and say they don't have the length that you need and you have to cut it, yeah, it is beastly. Just make sure you secure your ends. Like these are designed to be able to put the slider on, and I just can't say with certainty that the zipper sliders at a pre-bought zipper, you would have that kind of ease of getting it on. And they are not easy. It's definitely was a knack we had to get the hang of. And sometimes I've seen, like one of the factories I worked in that used this exact same zipper, they had this little like gizmo. It was tiny and it mounted to the table. It looked like 2 tines of a fork. And it was mounted there, and then they would just put I think they put their slider on that, and then they would feed their zipper into it. But it's not like YKK just says, here's a free installer with your order. The rep probably doesn't even know they exist, to be honest. You know, they're not sewers themselves. So you just kind of got to figure it out. And those things get bent. I've seen them. You might as well just figure it out. So, all right. So I'm going to put a bunch of those aside. Maybe I'll use cream zipper on some of them. Yeah, so someone gifted me this chicken wire fabric. So, of course, I'm going to pair it with the chickens. Let me get my stiffener out. I want to dump all my vinyl pieces. So when you cut these out, just remember you want your motif to fit below the zipper window, and you could use the vinyl, just lay it on top and go, okay, it's going to fit under there if you're planning on putting the piece with the motif on the front. And I think for this one, I'm probably going to put the chicken wire on the front because then my tools will show up in there, and all my chickens will be, or roosters will be, on the back. So the first step, we're going to bind this piece of vinyl. And I can tell my vinyl here, it has a texture on the back, so that is the wrong side. Hi, Melody. Oh, okay, okay. Yes, that's the other thing, is like all zipper and sliders are a certain size. These are 4.5 and they're coil. And then like what you buy at the fabric store, something like this is probably a 2.5. I've lost the little tag. I don't know if it would say on it, but it's quite a bit smaller. And I'll show you how to deal with that if you buy these. Because, you know, even if you buy our quilt or kit for this, it only comes with 2 zippers, 2 pieces of vinyl, and 2 pieces of stiffener, and some binding to do 2 notions cases, just to get you kind of started, like learner notions cases. But you will want to use this again. You don't have to buy our kit. You know, you can go to the store and get, you know, a yard of stiffener. It's going to get you a ton of notions cases. So, all right, so I put this on the back side of my vinyl. Mine has a texture. Sometimes it's shinier on one side, and we really like the matte side to show. So it's just up to you. We like it to be low glare. And you're going to line up the edge of the binding. The binding we use is 1 3/8 inch wide. I'm going to gently tug it, really gently. And that's what's going to make it do its thing on the other step like magic. And you can see how it's pulling up. Can you see that? Because I gently pulled it. And now when I turn it to this side, it just kind of naturally wants to go under like that. And I use a little awl. My awl's becoming kind of famous because I use it so much. I really love using it kind of like a pointy finger so I don't have to get my fingers that close. Hi, Nancy. Oh, your first coffee. This right, yeah, I think this came in lots of different colors. I have the white background. I'm trying to think, I think there was a rust background too. But I honestly don't even know where it came from or where I got it. It was like one of those things where either someone gave it to me or I bought it as part of a set because, of course, people are always wanting to give us chicken things, you know. Okay, so we've got our vinyl piece. No need to back tack. And then now I'm going to put my zipper on. I don't like that one. I'm going to put this one. So I don't like it when there's a little bump there. But because I'm talking with you and putting it on, you know, that's probably what I'm going to get. All right, and I like my slider to go right to left when it's zipped up. And that's just my preference. It does not matter at all. Just depends on what you like. And then I'm going to line up this tape of the zipper to the bottom edge of my binding. If it shows through, it's always going to show through. So you want to do it right before. And then I'm just going to edge stitch the binding. And now the reason I did the binding, so my zipper's going to be too short. Remember, these were the miscut ones. So I'm just going to make my notions case a little bit narrower. No big deal. I'm trying to use up these cut zippers. So that's okay, because see, I started a little bit off the edge right there. That's where the edge is of the vinyl, like that. That's fine. This doesn't have to fit us, so we can make adjustments like that. Yeah, you need an awl, Olivia. I love my awl. But see, now we have this little, it came shy because, like I said, I'm using zippers that are in the bin right now, not the zipper that it comes on the roll. So I'm just gonna fold it in half, line it up, and now it's fine. Just the fabric pieces will be too short. So, all right, so now I'm going to make what I call a sandwich. Okay, so what I did want to say though about the binding, the reason I start from the back side and then go to the front is because nobody's going to see the back side. It still looks good, but you can also see where you stitched before. You can cover up the original seam that you did, and it's just a great spot to just try out binding because you just need it to look good on this side. And there's other ways to sew binding. You can actually do it where you sew it, you fold it in half like this, and then stitch it on and then just fold it over. But I find that to get really narrow and it's really tricky, so I don't typically do that. All right, so I'm going to just slide this to the left and tack it down. And I'm going to get rid of that extra there. Okay, and then I'm going to show you if I were using the other zipper width. So say I'd used this zipper, like a store-bought zipper, not the one that comes in our kit, and I lined it up with my bias tape, attached it, it would be that much shorter. So then what you would do is just line up this whole thing to the bottom and then trim off the excess of the top of the case. You can line it up with the top, but it's a lot harder to trim that curve. You might as well just trim that straight, nice line. You can just put it on your table with your rotary knife and then just clean it up a bit. And all that happened was that your notions case got 1/4 of an inch shorter. That's it. So you could also, you know, sew this a lot higher up like that, but you're barely going to catch it. You see that? It's a little bit dicey. So, all right. So now I'm going to make my notions case sandwich. And when you're lining all these pieces up, Get rid of all the threads and stuff like that on your stiffener, because you'd be surprised what can show through on the fabric, especially if it's a light colored fabric or a thinner fabric. You just want to get rid of all that. And then I'm going to tack it. And don't worry, I'm going to trim that other side up. And then I'm also going to put a label on it. You don't have to do that. I don't know if I'll sell this, but I like to have the option, or a way to donate it, or maybe send it to something like a retreat or something, those little more unique ones. Okay, I'm just going to trim this up. And now nobody knows my zipper was the wrong size. Okay, so a note about working with vinyl. So do you notice that I have not, my machine has not come in contact with the vinyl once. My machine's only come in contact with the fabric, and the fabric to the vinyl. And the reason that is some of you probably know, vinyl can be really tacky on the machine. I do have a Teflon presser foot, but I don't have it on my machine right now. I don't like sewing with it very much, and I'd rather not switch between. And you can get a Teflon throat plate as well. I don't find that to be as helpful as the Teflon foot, just so you know. If you really need you just need that peace of mind, you want to tack around this edge, you could do it two ways. You could do it from this side. If you have to do it from this side, you could put a piece of like tape, just Scotch tape that you wrap a present with, on the underside of your presser foot right here. And then take like a little nail file and then just kind of file off the edges of the tape, get rid of it, because you don't want your string and fuzzies sticking to it and getting in the way. You know what I mean? And then you've got a temporary Teflon foot. The tape will definitely rub off and wear out eventually, but it's a great thing to do in a pinch. You can also put a piece of tissue paper between the vinyl and the presser foot, but the way we sew this, we don't come in contact with vinyl at all when we do it. Okay, so here's my other helpful hint. When you make your little sandwich, pull the fabric, especially the back one, because you see how it's a little loose. Make sure when you tack it, you get it as taut as possible. It'll just make your life a little bit easier. And now we're going to bind it. We only have 2 more steps left. And I start from the back, and I just line it all up. And I sew it at 1/4 inch seams. I'm pulling it a little tiny bit. I'm going to go gently around the corner. So my industrial machine has a heel lift, so it's the back of my heels lifting up the presser foot. Just so you know, just in case you're unfamiliar with my sewing machine here and how I sew, it has an automatic back tack and thread cutter as well. It's why I really love using it, that and the fact that the pressure of the presser foot right here, this thing, is really stout. Like, I don't want anything to move once I've got it under the machine. You see I have this little ripple here? That's going to kind of even out once I get the binding on there. I won't get any tucks. And so when we tacked the case, we tacked it inside that 1/4 inch seam allowance so it doesn't show. See that? And now I'm going to go around the edge here. I'm just going to make sure that I trim it the width of the seam allowance that I just sewed, because right there I got a little off right there, especially the stiffener. You definitely want to make sure, because now you're going to ask your binding to wrap around the edge of the whole case, and the stiffener adds that kind of thickness that you need to account for in the width of the binding, if that makes sense. This looks a little bit, no, it's probably okay, but we can make sure. You don't want it any narrower than the seam allowance. Having the full seam allowance will help your binding look really nice, you know? Okay, so now I turn it to the right side, and you see how it naturally wants to curve around? It's because I did that gentle pulling as I attached the binding. All right, and then the reason I know I'm going to sew this pretty good is because I can see the original stitching line, right? There's my original stitching line. I just need to fold my binding just past that and stitch on that seam line or to the right of it, and then all of the stitching will be in the binding front and back. I figured all these little things out over the years because I did not know how to sew binding at all when I first started sewing it, and I really wanted that look for chicken boots. So I just sat there trying to figure it out. We didn't have, you know, the internet was not where it's at now. I don't even think YouTube existed. I don't know. It wasn't what it is now. So you see, I'm just going, like the fold is just past the stitch. And as long as I stitch where that stitching line first is right here, or to the right of it, I'll land inside the binding. It's like so obvious, but still so confusing, because when you're trying to think of what's going on the back of your notions case while you're sewing, it feels a little overwhelming to think that, why do I have to care about what's going on in the back? But at the same time, most people don't like sewing binding because they don't like seeing what happens to the back while they're doing it. And so the way I look at it is just know what's going on as you're sewing it and think about it ahead of time. So that's pretty good. Right here, I'm a little bit off. I don't really care about that. It's handmade. You can take it out and fix it, but the top of our binding is going to cover up that much of it. And I don't know, would you be sad if your friend gave you this notions case with that much stitching sewing? Of course not. You'd be thrilled your friend gave you something and they made you something. So that's the way you got to look at it. All right, I get rid of my little messy thread tails there because that's what my machine loves to give me. I start on the back, I line up my binding, and I'm going to hang off a little bit of a tail, like it's about an inch, and then I'm going to wrap it around really taut. You don't have to do it really, really taut, just it is a little easier to deal with if it's on there pretty tight. And then I'm going to sew along here, and when I get to my zipper pull, I'm going to have to slide it away from my foot. You can see my tape poking up right there, and that's because the zipper is now open on the other side, so it's relaxing. Yeah, exactly, Nancy. I know. YouTube's pretty amazing. Okay, so now I'm going to leave that 1-inch tail again. I'm going to wrap it. So you want to stop sewing like a good 2 inches away so it's easier to do this part. Sometimes I forget, and I'm like, oh, darn it, I got to back up. All right, so I've pulled it, and this is one way your aul's handy, or whatever you like to use, because I can, if it gets a little sloppy, like I just pulled it and it gets a little sloppy like that, I can actually grab it with my awl underneath and pull it, snug it up there like that. I don't really need to trim this edge too much, just a little bit. So now our last step, and then I do a little folding technique to kind of tidy up the edge. Pull it all straight up, and I kind of give it a good tug because sometimes, you know, it wants to kind of stay a little bit unturned. So gonna fold it straight up, or pull it straight up, and then I'm gonna fold this edge one corner down, and then now you just treat it like you're going to hem it up like that. It makes like a little envelope edge. There's lots of other ways you could do this. This is just the way I figured out that works. It's fast. We need something really easy to do here, and something we could repeat over and over again that always gives us the result we want. So this is the method that we worked. Hi Edna, how's it going? Yeah, I just love my awl, and the awl I use is the tapered tailor's awl, not the one that's more like a stiletto, I think. I don't know the name of that. I should find out the name of it. I know some people have that one because it's more common, but it is a little too sharp, and it just sometimes pierces the fabric, and I can't like grab the fabric. All right, here we go. Not bad. Pretty cute. And see, look, my little, I have a little bit, can you see that even? I have a little bit of like a little fabric ripple there. And so that would have been even worse had I not made sure that this back was smooth. All right, let's do one more. Which one should I do next? Let's see. Well, I kind of want to sew this one because of this owl. I love this fabric. Hasn't been on our line in forever, and I just found a bunch of cut pieces in the bin. I was like, oh, I'm going to make that work. Okay, so I'm going to put the owl again on the back. That's how I cut it, and I got some wrinkles in there. This is the quirk with this fabric though. You see that? It's like, it's part of the printing and always looks like it's a flaw. All right, so this is how it's gonna look. That's a little crazy of a front. I was having trouble finding a fabric to go with it though. But once it's sewn, sometimes something magic just happens, you know? It looks like it's supposed to go together once it's all sewn together. All right, so I'm going to start with my binding on the vinyl, right side to wrong side. I pull it gently. See, it lifts up, and then, and I don't trim this edge. I just try and keep it the width I need. You don't really want to have to trim that edge. You don't want to lose too much of the height of your vinyl window, because then otherwise you'll start losing height overall on your case. It won't fit together as perfectly. I have so much binding to pick from here, but sometimes it's just never enough, you know? Oh, I was going to show you how to cut binding too. If you guys want to know that, just let me know. I'd be happy to show you how I cut binding. We don't cut, yeah, I know, that's what I was thinking too, Nancy. I thought it looked like wood grain too. We don't cut our binding anymore. We have it cut for us because we need so much of it, but sometimes we do for special projects and limited edition things. All the Harry Potter stuff, this year's the first year we didn't hand cut all the binding for that. That was the gift I gave us, that we wouldn't have to hand cut all that binding, because since we're using custom fabrics, the custom printed fabrics don't go through the binding machine very well. So we just wanted to take that element out of it. Okay, I need to get my zipper pull past the presser foot as I put this on. Yeah, and I'm sorry I'm not using like the exact length zipper you're supposed to use, but like I said, I'm trying to use all these bins, these zippers that are in the bin right now. All right, so there we go. I'm gonna put a little label on here. This is a little kooky. I don't know, you guys. I'm gonna line up my tag with my zipper. That's why I've got it in a little bit. I'm going to pull this a little bit tight. Oh, in fact, I'm going to take this off because that's not okay. Like that, I missed that right there. It could go a little bit more. Let's line it up better. I don't want it to start getting too narrow, you know, just because I misaligned it more than once. So, put that back on there. You really can't pin this project, but you can use your machine to tack things instead of pinning it together. So that's what I mean when I say tack it together. It's kind of like the same thing as basting, but we're not going to take it out. It's just an industry term. Okay, now I'm going to trim this excess off right here. I like getting rid of my threads as I go. Here we go. We're already on those two last steps. But like I said, you really do want to get like these kinds of wrinkles out of here before you sew, because they will be immortalized on your case if you don't. I can get this out, but because it's a really lightweight fabric, but I will, hopefully it'll correct itself and I won't have to. Because even if I iron it gently, sometimes the stiffener it'll just like just barely shrink up. It's really, you know, shouldn't shrink, but it kind of does. I think really that it's just getting denser. You know what I mean? I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I just know by experience. All right, so I'm going to trim this to the seam allowance. That's nice. You don't have to worry about catching the back side because it's just a nice flat product. When you get around your zipper right there, you just want to make sure you really do get that 1/4 inch, because that thickness is already going to cause you to deal with it while you're sewing the binding. So you just need to make sure that you get that. Maybe this binding will calm down that wood grain. I think it's supposed to be water, but it looked like wood grain to me. It was from another project from a long time ago. All right, get it going. I don't back tack, you guys, because I don't have to until the very end. All of these start spots are going to be enclosed in something, so I don't have to back tack. And my machine can be a little messy with its back tacks, and I don't want to have to deal with that. I don't really like it creeping into the visible area. It just looks messy. And, you know, we're all fighting for our stuff not to look homemade all the time, right? Even though everything in the world is sewn by a human being, you know? We're really hard on ourselves. So what are you guys all working on? Have you guys done anything since I talked to you like 2 weeks ago? I can't believe how long it's been. All right, there we go. I guess it hasn't been 2 weeks because I saw you that Saturday before. So remember, I hang off 1 inch right there. I pull it really snug. You only need about 40 inches of bias to do a whole one of these cases too. And you know, I should mention, like, you could do a no vinyl one. Just substitute that with a piece of fabric and you're good to go. That's all, the only change you have to do. You don't have to do anything else. You still bind it, you still attach it to the zipper, you still bind around it. You just can't see inside the case anymore. So if you wanted one that has privacy, because sometimes people don't use these for just notions, you could just make a solid fabric one, or maybe you want the fabric to be right front and center, you know. What's really fun too is that this is so small, you could design your own fabric on spoon flour or put a face on there, like upload a picture, print out a fat 1/4, and you know, you can make a whole notions case with 1 fat 1/4 on there. No problem. Probably a little bit more, depending on which fabric base you pick, because some of the fabric bases are pretty wide. All right, so my little folding technique, I pull it straight up. Sorry, I'm doing some of this just kind of without saying anything, so just stop me. Ask me questions if I'm going too fast. All right, so you pull it straight up, just like when you're finished sewing, nothing new there, right? And I just fold down a corner, and I fold this to line up with the top edge of the case right here. And then now I just roll hem it, fold, fold, and I got my little envelope corner. Tidies it all up, keeps it in there. Okay. This binding's very lightweight, that's why you see it kind of munching up there. This is one of my pet peeves. You see this little raw edge there? I hate that. So I'm always trying to like get that in there. Like that. See, the torquing you see here is because this fabric's really lightweight. You should treat it a little bit differently. But that's pretty cute. I really love this fabric. It has deer, bears, raccoons, owls, fox, and they all say, hello, fox, hello, owl. They're really cute. There we go. We have 2 notions cases done. They're both black and white. No problem. Let's see, like, you know, half hour, 40 minutes to do 2 while talking. So you can make these for Christmas gifts. We'll make a couple more on Saturday, unless you want me to make 1 more right now. I have 3 more cut out, so they're ready to go. Or we can get right to the closet organizer. I have everything laid out. Let's, you know, I realized when I went to cut it out, I was like, okay, I really should have used the fabric for the sample for the stream, because that's what I'd planned the whole thing around, the fabric wise. And I knew I had enough, you know, but then I needed to keep sewing them, and I wanted a nice one for the photograph, even though photographs are a little bit and I apparently have a thing for green and white fabric, so that's what I did. I cut out all my green and white fabrics. And so, let's see. Firstly, where are my bases? Oh, here they are, right here. Here's my green and white fabric. I have a lot of them. Okay, so almost all the pattern pieces for this will be a schematic. Like it'll just say cut to this many inches wide by this many inches tall. And I'm also going to draw a little, like a miniature version of it, so you got a visual. I find visuals are just so helpful. Most of us are visual learners anyway. But the hanger pocket at the top will be a printable thing, so you don't have to figure that out. And then I have the wrapping paper organizers right here, so you can kind of see the scale of it with me. See? And then it's got a pocket on each side, so you can slip a hanger inside there, like that. And I've been trying it, and I find like I wanted it to have 2 hangers because this thing can get pretty heavy, just empty. It's a little bit weighty. And, you know, when you put all your stuff inside. So I made like a non-Christmas side, and then I made a Christmas side. I never, ever, ever buy Christmas fabric, like Christmas specific. I love winter fabrics, but I never buy Christmas fabrics. But when I saw this, I really liked this fabric. And then I made another one. My first one, like this was my first successful prototype. So that's the one with the kitty. So it doesn't have to be wrapping paper, right? And I've got, trying to make sure you can see it all. These 2 pockets are exactly the same size, and these 2 are exactly the same size as each other. These 2 are the same size as each other. So you're only cutting 3 different 3-dimensional pockets. Hi, Elaine. Oh, hi. Oh, it's 5 a.m. Oh my gosh. No, you can rewatch it later. We're on an hour later on Saturdays. I'm sorry. It's so early. You are brave. But thanks for saying hi and joining. I appreciate that, Sam, Elaine. I keep wanting to say Sam because the 5 a.m. looks like Sam from here. Sorry. So these are 2 other hangers that I tried. So I feel like it'll accommodate lots of different kinds of hangers, because I don't know if you guys have bought hangers lately, but they have been upgraded, you know. This one's the skinny kind. It still has the shoulders. Like this one doesn't even have the shoulder. You start even thinking about hangers differently. Look at that. This one's flat, no shoulders. This one has the shoulders. And then the other 2 are very standard, like plastic. I think you can get those like at the dollar store, you know. And I tried it with like a antique wooden hanger that I have for like really heavy coats. It worked as well. So I just only have one of those. I feel like even though these 2 are completely different, they still work. So I do think, though, that most of the burden would be on this one, because when you line up, this is what you have to think about, where this lines up on the dowel in your closet. This one is taller. See that? So I would think about that. I'd pick 2 identical hangers when you hang yours up. So, all right, so we're going to put that there. All right, let's see here. So got my hanger pocket. And I have my rotary mat here. And so once you cut out the 2 backing pieces, I have to use a weight, otherwise my my little rotary mat will slide right off. So I have a backing for one side and a backing for the other, and you have to trim the top shape, but you can use this as a pattern piece. So you just line it up at the top here. And you know what? Actually, I need to do 2 notches. I need to do one that is 10 3/4 of an inch. This is important to remember. Like, you could do it after you trim this, but it's going to be trickier. So I would do it before you trim that shape. So 10 3/4. You need a notch here and here. And then on the other one, you need it to be 16 inches up from the bottom. That might change by the time I do the final pattern, But just remember to do your notches for each piece. And then you're good to go. My little rotary mat got a little warm and steamy, and now it's all warped. I'm gonna have to buy another one because it's kind of bugging me, you know? Okay. So this is the top of this one. And this is the top of this one. So you actually could cut these out at the same time if you wanted. I'm going to do one side and then the other side. So all you're doing is cutting this little angle off. That's it. And you want to line this up so that this is flat and this point touches the top like this. And then you're going to just trim off that edge like that. You can throw it away. And now you can either fold it like this, make sure that you still got it about in the right spot. I'm actually going to do this so it's less fussy. And I'm going to test this out. Like if you forget to do this and you sew your hanger pockets, you assemble them, and then you remember, oh shoot, I need to trim this. And then you use your sewn pieces to trim it. I'm going to double check. I think it'll still work, no problem. Okay, make sure this is the top of this one. And as far as like the planning and the cutting and everything goes, I feel like this is the fussiest part. So it's really not that fussy. I just wanted the schematic to be very straightforward, you know, cut this rectangle, and then I really like it when you get to cut more than one of the same pattern piece and not just like one of each thing, you know, because then it just feels like a lot of hands-on stuff. Okay, move that out of the way. All right, so I'm going to assemble my hanger pocket since it's sitting right here. And you cut 2 of each. So I have 4. If you want to do different fabrics front and back, the pattern is going to have instructions for buying fabric like that. So I'm going to do it right sides together. And the reason I did this is because I feel like this, you know, the hanger is like where all the stress of this thing is. So I wanted this to be stout. I also wanted this to be easy to sew, and you do have the fabric anyway, otherwise it's waste. So at least it's there. So you're going to sew this little top curve at 1/4 inch. And you're going to sew this bottom long edge at 1/4 inch. And say you didn't have enough fabric, like you're using stash fabric, like I did for this. And I did for the cats as well. If you're just going to use one layer, you can just hem this long edge right here. But this edge right here is going to be kind of tricky to hem. So you might try maybe making a facing across the back, like cut a little piece of fabric, you know, just trace around this edge here and then maybe cut like a 1 inch wide facing, or use binding. You could bind it. That would be totally fine as well. I would just trim off 1/4 inch and then bind it because you don't want it to get too high up. You don't want that hole to get too small. It probably will still work with most hangers. I've just been testing it with all the ones that I have here. So yeah, if you want to use less fabric, you could do it that way as well. I just found like this is the easiest. And then you turn it. I don't even need to use my loop turner, which is really nice. Yeah. And then you're going to press it. That curve, you could probably clip the curve meaning you could do this if you want it to be a little easier. Probably should have. It's pretty gentle, but if you're going to clip it, do it before you turn it, like this. Well, let's look at it. I bet this one will lay nicer. So let's see. It's probably a good idea. This is only the 4th one I've sewn, you guys. So, yeah, I mean, look at that. That curve is a lot happier than this one. You can feel it's kind of fighting. So let's clip it. Why not? Let's go for broke here. Like, I don't think you could use this thing to organize your shoes because those get really heavy. But, you know, I think I'm going to make one that organizes some of the like guest linens in the guest thingy. And I think I'm going to make one to organize all the weird things in my closet. Like, by weird, I mean like scarves and belts and stuff like that, you know, like, because if it's, I feel like you have more space vertical sometimes than you do on your floor, right? So, all right, let me fire up the iron here. Warm that up and then we can press it. And let's hem our pockets right now as well. So let's see, this is the 10 3/4 one, okay. The one that has the notch coming from the top down is side A, and then the other one is side B. That's how I'm calling them. Side A. So there's my other green. I'm telling you, I have lots of green fabric, you guys. And I think like you could sub in hems for binding. So I'm going to do that on this fabric, but on these, and here's my binding. I'm still good friends with someone I went to high school with, and I will admit my high school colors were green and white, and if he were here he would say, oh, I know why you like the green and white, you know. It's like, no, it's not. I just like green and white. I just really love it. So this was old, like, you know how you get curtains and they're really too long because we buy pre-made curtains these days, you know. This was the little section at the bottom. So I've always loved this green and white. It's from a house we moved away from, so I don't have the curtains anymore. But I just found this in my bin. I was like, oh, this would be so cute for the little pockets. So I'm gonna hem all these pockets here. I was just looking at, it just looked kind of funny there. I think it's because I have a pretty hefty needle in my machine right now, I just realized, and I can see the needle holes. So it's a 3/4 inch hem allowance, and you can just roll it 3/8 3/8. You can overlock the edge and turn it 3/4 of an inch, however you want to do it. Doesn't matter. I don't need to back tack. There's 4 pockets on that side. Here's my other green and white fabric. I just made a store display for the fabric store here, and they just asked, and I was like, yeah, sure, I'll make you something. And so I made the Archer button up for them, and it's Kelly green. And when I was sewing, I was like, this is kind of crazy. This is a very festive Archer button down. It's like Kelly green. But, you know, maybe for the holidays. We don't celebrate a ton at the holidays, but I would wear that, you know, because it's green. And then I put like a fabric that looks like, I think like architecture, that's green and white as well, on the inside yoke and on the collar stand. It turned out cute. And it was interesting working with that fabric because it was a yarn dye, so it wasn't printed green. And you know, I don't know how to describe it, but it was kind of like gushy. Like it didn't like stitch definition. So I ended up not top stitching a lot, which for me, that's the fun part of making the Archer. I love all the top stitching. you'll find that the things I like to sew are kind of structured and involve top stitching and edge stitching, pieces, you know, like having lots of pieces and stuff. Just really like it. All right, I don't really need to iron these guys, so I'm gonna leave those there. I'm gonna iron these two. And my shoulders here, I'll turn my camera a little bit so you can see me over here. And my, you're looking through the thread on my machine, sorry about that. I have one of these felt pads for ironing and I'm still really into it, really like it. Here's one. Yeah, I'm glad I actually notched that curve right there. It's a lot easier to iron. So I'm just lining up the raw edges and making sure I get, you know, that fold right down there. One easy way to do it I found too is sometimes what I'll do is I'll iron it where I push the seam allowance up like that. Kind of like when you're doing a French seam. And then I have less trouble, like you saw that I got that little like pleat in there. I don't want that pleat. That way it wants to kind of iron, like fold on that seam edge once you've kind of pushed the seam allowance to one side by ironing it. But now it's kind of fighting me to get corrected, of course. There's one more, and then we just have our pocket tops. So, because this one, I'm going to bind the black and green fabric pocket tops. So I don't need to hem those right now. I just did that so that it's an option if you guys would like to do yours that way, you know. Because, you know, I'm all about binding. But hey, I'm not cheating and using my binding machine behind me. Aren't you proud? All right, so we've got our hanger pockets. I have a feeling I'll probably end up sewing this with you guys kind of in the different order than the instructions tell you. Because, you know, I'm all over the place. And I'm trying to also do things that economize, like where my camera can be. Things like that. I have to kind of think differently when I'm with you guys. So this fabric, I just love the little objects on it. It was very folky to me. And then I just saw on the binding that it's a Kaffe Fassett. And it's actually called folk print. So I did not lower the top edge. Do I want this binding? It doesn't even match. Ooh, let me go get this other binding. Just a second. This one might work better. What do you think? What do you guys think? I kind of like this one. I planned on doing the whole thing like around the edge with this one, but I think I'm going to switch, at least for these pockets. Let's just do that. All right. So I live in California, and we woke up this morning and there's this crazy cloud over us, and it turns out there's a fire, and it's really bad, and my parents have been evacuated. They're not too far away from me, so they're on their way to my house, so I'm a little distracted today. The fires have been just so bad in California this year. My house is safe. My parents, I don't know. Kind of crazy. All right, so you could press this, you know, press it up that way if you want. I'm not going to. Binding kind of corrects itself. Now, when I pull and attached it on my first pass, I try not to pull too much. It will draw in the fabric, and I actually think that benefits this pocket a little bit because it will hold in the contents of the pocket a little nicer, kind of like a gentle form of elastic, you know what I mean? It's kind of nice that way. And I just turn it, cover up that first stitching. It's a little finickier than the vinyl. I've sewn a lot of binding. I know that, like, I know I'm making it look easy, but I know it's not. Like, I really don't like it when I hear that, oh, it's easy for you. No one likes hearing that comment. Because usually you're saying that to someone who worked really hard to get it that way. Yeah, thanks, Olivia. Me too. Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't look as crazy out there now, but like literally I thought it was a thundercloud. And then I thought I could see the fire, but it was because the sunrise was just under it. It was black. It would look like it was dark outside. Like it was that dark when the sun had already risen. It was kind of nuts. And my dad is a retired firefighter of like 32 years, ironically. And they've had to like leave their house a few times this year. So I don't like the same with my brother. My brother's up there too. And what's interesting is I live by this really major park, like a really big park that it's narrow, but it goes like all the way down to downtown in my town, and then goes all the way up into the hills, and then becomes like more wild. So it's a little bit more like manicured, maintained, has paths, and it really isn't like very wide. It's just really long, and it's amazing. It's just like has like 2 one-way paths going down it. But lately they have 100 goats in there. Like, I mean, it is amazing. There's like 100 goats in there, and they're like moving them every day, and they are just hanging out. They're like a block from my house. There's 100 goats moving their way through the park, eating up all the dry vegetation. They're doing such an amazing job, and they're cute. And my dog had no idea what to do. She was like, what the heck are those things? It's pretty cute. Is that my hair? What is that? It's like a piece of fabric, like synthetic fabric thread. I don't use any synthetic fabric. Okay, let's see here. Okay, so we have our little card pocket, and you can see the binding's kind of drawing it in there. Do you see that? Kind of this way. I kind of like that. Yeah, me too. Me too, Brooke. Nice to see you, Brooke. Yeah, I actually kept meaning to send you a picture, Brooke, because it's hilarious. It's hilarious. Like, you never see farm animals right there, you know? And there's 100 goats intensively grazing, and they're moving them through the park. The park itself is probably 5 miles long. I wouldn't even say it's a 1/4 mile wide. Like, it's that narrow. It's pretty interesting until it gets up, like at the end of that 5 miles. Then it just gets huge and goes up into the hills. In fact, Robin Hood, like the original Robin Hood, you know, the black and white, that was where it was filmed, up there. And it's wild, and there's like a canyon and a river, and people go swimming in like gorgeous swimming holes up there, you know. But that one is less manicured. It's not manicured at all. They wouldn't really graze the goats there either. Maybe they would, actually. I shouldn't even say that. I kind of like that this binding kind of lightens up this dark fabric. Sometimes you buy fabrics and you don't know what you're going to do with them, and I try not to do that because there's a lot of fabric in my life already. But I bought this because I just fell in love with it, and then when I went to like make it into a garment, I was like, this is a little too much. Oh, that's awesome, Brooke. Yeah, it's pretty funny. Like they have to close. There's so many paths because this park is like a highway. Oh, it came from my local fabric store here in Chico at Honey Run Quilters, but it's K Facet and it's called Folk Print. And it's why I liked it. It has all these little folk objects on it. You know, it's a needle and a teapot and a donkey and just all these little things. I just love it. Like a birthday cake. I don't know. I really just love a little. Is that? Yeah, I think that's a pin cushion. Looks like paintbrushes poking out. But you know, of course, I was drawn. I love wheels as well. You know, it's just simple. I didn't even know it was one of his. I just saw it today or yesterday when I was cutting it out. I was like, oh, I didn't even know that. All right, so now I'm going to do all of the gussets. And so when I have you cut this out, I have you cut out rectangles. And then I'm going to include 2 squares, a 3.5 inch, I think, square and a 1 1/4 inch square. And you're just going to put it in the corner and cut out the corners. You don't have to figure it out. You don't have to measure down and over. You just put that corner on there and cut them out. And I will say, if you want to make your pockets deeper or shallower, like this way, like so here's your corner, right? If you want to make it deeper or shallower, you just trim off or add to these 2 edges. And it will not change the pocket dimension, because the pocket dimension is like from here to here and up, right? So all you're doing is changing the depth, increasing it or decreasing it. You just do it with these 2 sides and this right here. It's like kind of mind-bending to think about, but that is all you have to do. And it'll still fit into the same spot on your organizer. Yeah, I know, Nancy. I have to kind of cut back on my archers right now. Like I have kind of a few and I have one more. I'm trying to make it look more true to color by adding, see that kind of helped it. Because it is like, it's a Kelly green, and this is a true black. It looks like a batik, but it's not. So, all right, so now I don't need to do it to this one. This is the side A card pocket. Let's see. I keep making sure I know which one of these is which. This is the side A, so, because it's got the notch that's closer to the top. See this notch right here? The notch that's closer to the top has the shape up there. So it's side A. I'm going to put that with that. And the pattern will come with like little pieces of paper you can pin to each pocket piece. Make it easier. It'll, like labels, you know what I mean? And this is also side A, so I'll finish these 2. And at the last second yesterday, I realized that the pockets looked a little too like gushy, like kind of like all over the place, and that's when I added the edge stitching definition on the outside. And it's easy to do, and I really recommend it, and I'll show you how I'm going to do it. And don't kill me, I'm not going to change my thread color. I like to break the rules here. I like you to know you can do whatever you want, because once it's sewn, it'll look like it was supposed to be that anyway. Almost every time. I admit, I have made some bad fabric choices, thread choices, binding choices. I've done it all. Okay, so now we have our depth of our pocket there. You can see that? Kind of hard to see with the black. There we go. So see, if you wanted to change the depth of the pocket, you could do it after it's sewn as well, right? So my pocket did not change length and height, like height and width, when I made it shorter just now. See? Or less shallow. I got to use the right lingo just so it makes sense. Just remember, if you do cut it once you've got this sewn, make sure you re-back stitch at your spot that you cut. Sometimes the simplest things are the most confusing. So I'm just lining up my cut edge, and I find that this little corner right here is always tricky for all of us to cut, especially if you use a rotary knife. So line it up from here, line up these spots, because you probably got that right, and then just trust in that and then fold it along there. And you know, if your rotary knife slips in, you know, like you say you on this leg of it, go in there a little bit. You're going to be okay probably as long as you don't go past your seam allowance. And the seam allowance is only 1/4 of an inch. I'm sorry it's so small, but the reason I'm doing that is so that you don't have to trim a ton at the very end for the binding. I like 1/4 inch seams. I use them a lot. This isn't a garment. We don't really need the extra to use just in case we need to fit ourselves or let it out. So you don't really need a bigger seam allowance than that. All right, so here's our pocket. So we have our two, these are the like the ones that the wrapping paper rolls would fit in. They're really tall. And so now I'm going to add the definition of the pocket. And by the definition, I mean I'm going to edge stitch around here. And this is my little trick. I'm going to start on this side. Okay. Poke out your corner there. Just poke it out nicely. Come on, little corner. Poke out. And then I'm going to line it up to get the right width. So you see I'm using, get that out of the way. I'm using the depth of this seam here, lining it up, cut edge to find where I want to fold right there. So then I have a nice parallel straight line just like that. That makes sense? Looks like it's going a little bit that way. The binding's pulling it up there, so it does make it look like it's going a little straight. And you know what? It spells here, you're close to that. Yeah. Oh, hi. Oh, hi, Stephanie. Oh, yeah, it's fine. I have lived with that name all my life. It's not a big deal. I believe in language that as long as you know what someone's trying to say, it doesn't matter really how they say it, right? I mean, gosh, if someone's learning another language, at least they're trying to learn another language. Okay, and it's the same with my name. All right, I'm just going to edge stitch it. So I'm just stitching along the edge there, like right there. I know some of you are probably twitching that I'm using cream thread. All right, so now when I get to the corner, just push that up like that and line the seam up with the edge stitching. Smooth it all out, and you're gonna go corner to corner, so you have a spot right here. Doesn't matter which way you push the seam allowances, you really don't have to push them either way. Thanks, Stephanie. All right, I just kind of sink my needle in the corner. Oh, and I missed my, oh, sorry, I missed my corner right there, so I'm gonna put it back in, and now I'm just gonna rotate it again like that. Line up my seam there, and then up here, I'm going to just make sure that it's the same width like this. Like, I really like making things so that you don't have to get up and figure it out or measure anything. There's logic involved when you're using shapes and geometry. Things that we do all the time that we don't even realize to like double check our work or whatever. Okay, there we go. Just edge stitch it. All this is doing is giving your pocket that really boxy definition. Like that. See? Like that. Oh, the color looks really bad on the camera. Yeah, so, and then, you know, once it's sewn, you'll have that nice boxy shape. That cat one I made is like a linen cotton canvas by Cotton and Steel, so it's got some nice heft to it, and I really like the way it looks. So I will admit that if you use kind of a not too heavy of a fabric, because you don't want this thing to get really, really heavy, but if you do something that has some oomph to it, I think that you might like the results, especially depending on what you're planning on putting in your pockets. So, okay, I'm just going to do my other one. And remember, I start like this, so the top of the pocket is here, bottom is here. I start on this side, right here. So if you're facing the pocket, it's the, if you're wearing the pocket, it's the right side. If you're facing it, it's left. So I just like to think of it this way. Top of the pocket, start on this side. And then you're going to make sure you have nice, straight, width there. It's not the end of the world if you get it a little bit kooky. It's not going to change how it fits on the organizer. That's important to know. You don't even have to do this. But when I did mine, I did it after the fact, and I don't recommend doing this to it after they're sewn on the backing. It was really tricky. And I didn't even do it along the bottom of my tiny pockets because that baffle or that depth is only 1 1/4 inches. And so it was really hard. Okay, I'm just going to do a couple stitches there and then get this set up. This one's pretty easy because I'm going corner to corner. I don't really have to do a whole lot of lining up. Just want to make sure I get into that corner. I'm really glad to see so many new people here today. And just so you know, like, you have to create what YouTube calls a channel to be able to, like, say hi. I think it's just they do that so that it cuts down on people trolling live streams. It's really not going to cut down that much. But, and thankfully, we have a lovely community here. We don't really have that happening. But they have you create something called a channel, and that's basically the equivalent of having an account. And then you can say, hey, how's it going? I'm making an astronaut suit. And we want to know about that, by the way. So you need to create a channel and tell us that you're making an astronaut suit, if that is the case. Or if you're making a bib, I don't really care. All right, so we have our side A pockets done. And now I'll do my side B pockets, which in my head I originally called like this the tissue like pocket, you know, like tissue that you wrap it for gifts. And this was the bags pocket because I feel like we have a lot of those gift bags nowadays. I have lots of every little thing and I like to reuse it. I think a lot of us do. So these are nice little wee pockets. And I'm using the bottom of a curtain that was too long. There's no need to finish these edges, by the way. Like, you don't need to serge those. If you want to sew them together with a serge, that's fine. I don't prefer that because sergers don't have back stitches, and I feel like the corner will eventually come kind of loose, you know. We've already hemmed these. The other one we bound, so if you want to do that, you can do that. It won't change how it sews to the organizer if you don't trim off what would have been the hem allowance. You can just bind it. Your pocket will just be a little taller. If you don't want your pockets to be taller and you want to bind the edges, just trim off 3/4 of an inch off each one. And the hem and seam allowance will be on the pattern really clearly. That's the one thing you can guarantee if I make you a pattern. It's going to have the seam allowance really obvious because it's my pet peeve when I have to hunt around on a pattern for the frotting seam allowance. I want it stated a few times and I want to know because everybody has their preferred methods and it's such a pet peeve when I can't find it. I ended up just using my own, you know, or I have to like measure a piece to find it. Do you guys have pet peeves with sewing? Like, I feel like there needs to be universal language for pattern envelopes. Just making all of our corners. It's pretty quick. This is one of those things, like, I really like kind of making these kinds of patterns, like when I'm designing it and putting down all the notes and everything. But when I went to sew it, I was like, oh, this seems kind of fussy. And then when I started, I was like, oh, this isn't fussy at all. I don't know. I think it's just because it was my first time sewing. Like any of us were a little daunted by the pile of pieces sitting there. And I just have to do what will make sense to me so that I back away from the ledge and stop trying to talk myself out of something. All right, so now we're going to put our pocket definition. Get rid of these threads. I like to keep things real. You would not know it by looking at my office, but I really like to keep my work surface clean. I find that the less threads later on, the nicer it looks. And I do feel like it's one of the telltale signs of something looking home sew is when we leave threads on there. All right, so I'm just checking my width there. This is all straight seams, doesn't have to fit us. And even if it fits the organizer a little wonky, like we'll come up with solutions for that too, so. We just rotate like that. I don't know how I'll describe that in the sewing instructions, except to say, please see the video. I don't want the instructions to be a mile long, you know. Then it seems daunting. So far it's been pretty easy to just guess that width, huh? Like I said, you don't have to turn these seam allowances one way or the other. You're not really like coming into contact with them. You're like kind of grazing them, so. I always start a few stitches and like make sure my machine's got a hold of it really well. So that was the easier way. See how I did that? I folded it, put the raw edge to that, and then I just kind of adjusted the fold like that. I don't think you could do that on that side because you're kind of folding the other way. And this isn't like a functional thing as far as like, we're not worried it's going to come apart or anything like that. It's really just to give your pocket kind of a polished look and a definition. I think it kind of sags a little less when you have given that more of that structure. Hey Nancy, let's see. Yes, I know. Who was it when Berta first came out? I was working in a fabric store and we were like, ooh, these patterns are pretty cute. They were kind of like a little more modern. No seam allowance, and that is not, it wasn't clear on there, I don't think at the time, because it was a European country. I'm pretty sure it was Berta. It was a European pattern company, and that's really typical. They don't put seam allowances on their patterns, like, so that's just how they do it. And I ended up like just never sewing them because and I'm a pattern drafter. Like at the time, I was just like just taking a break from the industry, so it wasn't something I couldn't do. But I will say, if you have to add seam allowance, this is the ruler you want to do it, because all you do is just, you know, like if you need 1/4 of an inch, you know, you just line it up to that line, draw your line, and you've just added 1/4 inch parallel. This is the ruler. This is what they give you in design school. Look at this cute little pocket, the big fat leaf on it. This fabric is stout. Okay. Yeah, I saw there's a new Japanese book out and I was like, I know, terrible. I should check it out though because it looks really cute. But I just like it to have seam allowances. And I do appreciate like I think that if we had just come up in our sewing used to doing that, it would be no big deal. And it's so funny because I've been a pattern drafter for a really long time, like almost 30 years. It is really natural for me to do it, but I'm just not thinking it when I get going on a project. I'm like laying it on the table, laying out the pattern pieces, and I'm going. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh shoot, that needed seam allowances, you know? Okay, here's my cute little chunky. I couldn't really center the leaves on this fabric, unfortunately, but it'll be fine, right? Yeah, this ruler's great. From the Wish app. I don't know what's that. So, okay, cool. Yeah, I buy them by the dozen because I used to buy them by the dozen because I would wear out the edge and it would be less accurate, and I need that first 1/8 of an inch. Like I will say, when you use these rulers a lot, you learn that, this is by See-Through. Oh, now it says Westcott. But the B85 is the, I think the style. Oh, can you see that? So the 1/8 I'm talking about runs parallel to the edge of the ruler. So this first 1/8 here and this first 1/8 here, they are sometimes different from one another because when they cut the ruler, it probably biases it left or right just because even machines aren't perfect or the printing isn't perfect. And you always learn, like this one's actually really great. But they used to always have one fatter 1/8 and one narrower 1/8, and all the 1/8s in between are perfect. And so you would learn like to use the shallower 1/8 for your seam allowance, so you could allow the pencil edge as part of the thickness of the 1/8 of an inch, and then the wider one for other things. So yeah, exactly, Olivia. I only use this. There's like 4 sitting right here. And they used to be stouter because I know now I nick them with my rotary blade, and that never used to happen. So I don't really know what they changed, but I have a few with gouges and they just go right in the trash because they're not accurate anymore. Kind of ruthless about my rulers. Just checking the time because, like I said, my parents were evacuated for a fire and I just want to keep track of them and help them out if they need it. Got to pick up the kiddo today. All right, so we're motoring along here. So I think I'm going to add the pockets at least to one side. And then maybe we can make a couple more notions cases. So we'll save the rest of it. So let's see. Let's do the one with the flat pocket first. So we're gonna do side A first. Now all my pattern pieces are nice and grouped in side A and side B. Side A is the easier one. It's the one I would recommend starting with because the other side is the only side that the side B has 2 of the pockets are floating in the middle of the backing. So you're gonna have to mark that. So it's the last marking, and I actually didn't mark my second one and it went totally fine. So I just wanted to point that out. I would start with side A, and all you do once you have your little hanger or your hanger pocket constructed is you're just gonna set it on top here and line up the corners, these corners here, and then just top stitch it on there, just a little bit. Remember, you don't want to pull this. This edge is now on the bias because we cut it at an angle. You're only going to tack these 2 sides. This side needs to stay open. This needs to stay open because that's what's going to hold our hanger. I tried all kinds of things to do the hanger. I love where it ended up. I love seeing how things like that work, and why they don't work is so interesting. Because in my head, you know, I had a certain thing, and then I was like, that's just going to be too complicated. I'm probably going to have to make it square cornered. And then I was like, oh, I think the pocket will actually fit on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. So that allowed me to get rid of these shoulders here. Just because aesthetically it looks nicer. You really don't have to. You could actually finish this edge too and then top stitch it down if you didn't cut off the corner. You know, there's a lot of ways. Like I said, it's not going to fit anybody, so you don't really have to worry about certain things. And it's a great way to see how one pattern change affects some other piece of the the pattern. So interesting. Okay, so here's our notch that we made earlier. And I notched this in a way that is very much like in the industry. You would do it, you would put this cut edge up to that. You don't have to line up seam allowance or anything like that. You're just going to line up the raw edge of your pocket to that notch. And then you're going to line up the other side right over here with the notch as well. Raw edge to the notch. And you want to get this as straight as possible. And then just sew in a straight line. 1/4 inch seam. This way you're not having to like fold under the edge and top stitch it down. This is way easier. Like that, and I actually am going to edge stitch it. So see, my pocket is taller because we bound it, right? So if you wanted, I mean, like I could shorten it right now just by going like this. So I'll do this. This is how I'm going to shorten this pocket. Just going to like, I don't know, so I'm sewing like a fat 1/2 inch parallel to that line. And now it'll turn up there. And that's because we bound the edge. We didn't remove the hem allowance first. And now it's going to fold up like right there. And see, now it's ending about where it was before. So I'm going to tack this edge here. And so now it's going to get a little fussier to sew with because it's big, you know? And you're going to get through it, I promise. So I'm flattening this edge. See, the binding's pulling it up like that. And once it's like anchored onto the stiffener in the back, it won't be so finicky like that. My pocket's a little bit bigger right there. It could be how I cut it, you know. Gonna let it hang off and edge stitch it. So now I'm gonna just section this pocket in half. You can do it wherever you want, but I'm just going to fold it in half like this. I'm gonna crease it. And I'm gonna stitch on that crease. I'm gonna make sure I'm pulling on the sides here to center it best I can. I like that the binding is drawing it up, to be honest. I kind of like that because I feel like it holds the contents of the pocket a little bit. And it creates this lip. Like the binding creates like a little lip for things not to escape out of there. It's amazing just what that little piece of binding can do, actually. And I'm really liking the black on here. I'm glad I'm using it now. Okay, so now we're going to do our big pockets. They're the tall, like wrapping paper roll pockets. So you could shorten them if you don't want them to be that tall. If you shorten them enough and you're not putting tall things in them, you might be able to get 2 sets right next to each other. So you're going to sew them along one long side, right sides together, down to the pocket corner seam right there. You're just going to sew it 1/4 inch and back tuck at the top. I'm going to trim this off right now. I'll wait. I'll just wait. Fine. I normally wouldn't have done that right there anyway. So I'm going to line up my seams here. I think I'm going to push the seam allowance to the bottom and just keep them out of the way because I want an option when I get down to stitching it together. I'm trying to remember how it works best. So this is the bottom 2 roll pockets on side A. You stitch them together first, like that. See, now we're getting our pocket definition right there. See that? I have my camera really close to the surface so you could see under the needle a little better lately. Is that better? I can raise it up and you can see a little bit more, but it's a little harder to see under the needle. We're not doing any tricky sewing though, so maybe that works better. I think next week I'm going to sew a pair of ginger jeans. I think that's what's on the schedule. I can't see the schedule from here, but I'm going to sew another pair. I've got all this denim. I'm really excited about it, so I want another pair. And I have like all my ideas of what I want to do differently this time. Okay, so we're going to, I thought there was like a seam right there for a second, but it's just donkey feet. You're going to sew the pockets to the organizer back around the right and left side and the bottom, and you're going to line it up like this. So pay attention here. You see how we have this seam allowance right there? You're going to line up that seam allowance to the bottom. That's a good like gauge. Basically, you just want the seam to be 1/4 of an inch away from the bottom of the organizer, and you can use the seam allowance as your gauge. And I would kind of like back it off a tiny bit more, because as you sew, you know how things kind of shift a little bit. And then you're going to pull it taut, line it up at the top there, and you're just going to tack it just under the seam allowance amount. You can do it the seam allowance amount as well. And see, it did shift a little bit. I'm going to sink my needle into that seam right there, and I'm going to clip into that seam up to the needle at the corner there, so that when I turn my corner, it lays nice and flat like that. See that? I'll do it again on the other side. I'm trying not to pull. I tend to be a puller when I sew. I tend to pull things, and then I'm like, why doesn't it fit? And it's because fabric is stretchier than you realize. Okay, so this same thing, I want that seam to be 1/4 of an inch away from the edge, because when you're lining up seams, you're lining up the seam to seam, not the seam to a raw edge or something like that. I know I lecture a lot about that, but it is kind of counterintuitive sometimes. So we want that, because that's the finished edge, to be lined up 1/4 inch away from the cut edge there, just like that. And now I can pull it like this. It doesn't matter, it should work perfectly. You shouldn't have to line anything up. And I'm gonna kind of just hold it. Now I have a halfway point, and I'll show you what I'll do when I get to the middle. You really don't even have to do any lining up on this bottom edge. If you did your 1/4 inch seam when you joined your two pockets together, it's all gonna fit just right, as long as everything was cut right. So we're going to just nip 1/4 inch into either side of the seam. So here's the seam that we sewed the two pockets together right here. And so there's a lot going on right here. Don't panic, just nip in there. It all works out. And it all gets covered up with the binding at the end. Even if it looks kind of funky, it's a wrapping paper organizer, people. It's not gonna be the end of the world if it looks a little bit funky in there. It's gonna hang in your closet, and you're gonna use it 6 times a year, but you're gonna be so happy every time you go in there and all of your stuff is nice and tidy. Like I always say, we're not entering it into the fair. Grandma's not gonna see it and say, what were you thinking there? Our sewing teacher isn't going to see this. We're doing this for fun. Gosh darn it. All right, so now I nip into my corner right here again. I just go along the seam, and then it releases all the tension of trying to turn the corner. And you don't really have to line up this one either, because you're going to go until you don't have any more. Just like that. All right, so I'm going to trim this now. I'm going to look for all my little threads, because I probably have a bunch from sewing all my structure of my pocket there. I know exactly where my machine likes to leave threads. You know how that is? Like once you start sewing a lot, you start automatically going to the spot you know where there's going to be a thread, and you're like, oh, I'm really learning my machine here. It's kind of cool. Okay, so now we're going to stitch down these 2 pockets straight down the middle. And what I recommend doing is pushing the seam allowance. Don't open it up. Don't press it open, because I think, like, if you were to press this open and then stitch it down the middle there, I know it sounds super satisfying to do. Trust me, like, I would love to do that, like basically stitch in the ditch there. Then what you're doing is part of it's only going to be secured by the threads, the stitching threads. It's probably enough, but I think that because this can like pull with stuff inside of it, all the pressure that's going to be in the pocket, I think that pressing the seam allowance to the left or the right and then stitching through all those seams would be far more secure. And so that's what I'm going to set this up for. So I'm going to reach down here. I'm going to feel which one is the path of least resistance. It wants to push to the left. So I would totally recommend ironing it at this point, pressing it all to the left then. Hopefully that all makes sense. So I'm just going to kind of like press it like this. And now, where am I going to stop this, right? I don't want it to be crooked. And so if we made these right here, it's a nice little gauge. Look, that's the width of our pocket. That's where the seam goes. See? That's the width of our pocket. So that's how you know exactly where this wants to go. If you're a little bit crooked, not the end of the world. You won't notice it once it's hanging up. If it's a lot crooked, you might notice it and you'll just laugh every time you look at it and be like, oh well, next time. All right, so I've kind of grabbed it right here and I'm kind of holding it secure right at the top there. Making sure there's like no slack under there. Push the seam allowances to this way, to the left for me. And I'm just going to stitch through all those thicknesses. Straight up the middle. You could pin this. Please pin it. That's totally fine. I don't really like that my raw edges, because I didn't line it up very good. So I'm going to push these raw edges down in here to my awl, and I'm going to try and cover them up with my edge stitch right now. You could even like fold them in there. I'm actually going to trim this one right here at a little bit of an angle. I had to swap out my good little scissors because those others are getting so dull. Okay, so now I'm going to push this in there. Get in there. You're ugly. We don't want to see you. See that? Kind of hit it in there. Okay, and now I'm actually going to look at this right here and see, is there any other little threads that want to show up, because you're out of here. It's a kind of one of my pet peeves is when your threads poke out of your seam allowance, like from your back pockets and stuff. You'll hear me talk about it. All right, so now we have side A completely done, and we just need side B. Yeah, not bad. All right, so I'm gonna put that aside for Saturday. Okay, I really love the way these fabrics look in person. I thought this was gonna be kind of crazy doing the green and white, but it looks so housey and kitcheny, and it's kind of satisfying, I have to admit. It probably looks a little off. It looks a little like this is teal on the camera, I know, but I really like it. Oh, there's a thread. Did I not backstitch right there? Did I really not backstitch right there? Wow. Shame on me. Of course you want to backstitch there. I was crazy. There we go. I'm just used to not. I have an automatic back tack on my machine, but I just find it's a little bit overkill. Okay, so I'm going to set side A aside, side A aside. And then I'm just going to do a couple more notions cases because, you know, we can. Maybe I'll do some with some cream zipper. Which one could I do? I'm going to do some in this. This is one of my first fabrics for chicken boots. I loved it so much. And this one. These are the two I'm going to do. I sometimes just can't buy fabrics for us, you know, so I have to get a little bit for me, and this is one of those. I think actually someone gave me this because they knew how much I loved it, and she gave me 2 pieces from her stash, which was really nice. Like true fabric friends, right? They know that feeling where you just really want that fabric. All right, so we've got our vinyl and our stiffener, and yeah, we can do some cream. Sorry, I keep pushing up my presser foot. It gets tired of me waiting, and so it slams it down. All right, so this time I'll make my zipper the correct length. I'll just cut off a piece. What is the other color one? Yeah, I'll do another cream zipper. I need cream sliders. Get rid of this binding for now. So has anybody downloaded the Notions case pattern? I think, Brooke, you watched the video once. I remember that. I don't know if you made any. I think, Maria, you have too, right? I hope you guys make some. It's fun to share that pattern. We sell a lot of them. Probably a little tiny bit less because people might want to make them, but not really. All right, so I've got my zipper cut to length. So if you buy a zipper that's bigger, longer, you can just, thanks, Nancy. I really went through my stash for this. I feel like you guys are probably going to get sick of seeing some of my fabrics, but I have a lot here, so I'm trying to use them. So you want to secure any cut zippers. Don't think that you might not pull the slider off the end. Trust me, we do it, and it's annoying. So it's just something you just do instinctively. You're like, zip, and then it comes off. And if you bought one of our kits and haven't used it yet, and you're like, well, how is the zipper slider just floating in the middle? It's just how it is. And then once you've opened it, it stays open. So I just leave it down there because honestly, it's easier to deal with it when the coil's all zipped up down there. So yeah, absolutely, Olivia. They're really good Christmas presents. And like I said, like, you know what? We could actually do one with a fabric front on a Saturday. So you don't have to use vinyl if you don't want it, can't find it, don't like plastic. There's a lot of, you know, reasons that people may not use the vinyl. The first few vinyl things I ever sewed up were made from, you know how like when you buy like a twin comforter or whatever and they come in those plastic zipper bags? I used to cut those up to experiment with it. So I do not recommend that stuff. It's terrible. But it, you know, it gets the job done, but it can be a little wrinkly, very high glare, very unforgiving. So we put the binding on the vinyl, start from the back side to the front side. Mine has a texture you can't see, but the side's smoother. And I really like low glare, so we always buy matte vinyl. Our customers at first kind of pushed back on that. I think they've learned over the years that they can completely see what's inside their bag with it. And it just is nice not having the shine, because I actually find the shine to be a bit distracting. It looks cheap to me. And it also, you sometimes can't see it because it's like reflecting, you know, in your face. We absolutely use it on our pattern holder for sure because of the glare. We want low glare. All right, so here's my zipper is wider than a store-bought. So this one's already been unzipped. I'm lining it up with the binding tape like this and just top stitching the edge of the binding up here. I'm going to get my zipper pull out of the way. Like that. Just like that. All right, so should we do this on the front or this on the front? Let's see how it looks. Like this. Like this is, I think I'm used to seeing the main fabric on the front nowadays. I mean, the main fabric on the back nowadays, because the lining on the back, it just looks so unfinished to me. In fact, my favorite notions cases that we make have a main fabric front and back. I just really like that look. But I also really like the look of it, of this fabric, the less busy, usually simpler fabric on the front, because your notions are going to cover up that fabric, and that's the window you're going to look into. Oh man, this pink right here, my old boss hated this color pink. He called it Pepto-Bismol pink. He had a really thick French accent, so he said it, and it was really funny, but he was not a joking matter. He would be really mad at me if a color came in Pepto-Bismol pink. But, like, we were doing children's clothes, you guys. Little girls love this color pink. Quirky. Very quirky. All right, I'm going to tack all my layers. I made like my little fabric sandwich. I don't think I'm going to sell this, but it's just a habit. I can't not put a label on there. I line up everything from the top and then go down. And the way we sew these, you never have to come in contact with the vinyl. And when you're pushing this fabric, when you're tacking these ends, I really think pushing this fabric and making it pretty taut and smooth, it sets yourself up for the last step turning out good. There's just something about sewing this case that makes this fabric back here want to pucker at the top. So you just want to make sure that you kind of pull it taut. It sets yourself up to succeed. And that's kind of one of my mottos, is like ensure success. You know, like if you know it's going to be the 4 extra steps to pin it or iron it or set it up a certain way or tack it, but you know you'll get a better result if you do that, do it. You know, you want to go forward not being nervous, right? Okay, so here's our notions case sandwich. If you want to tack these other corners, you can. You know, just make sure you do it really close to the edge so that when you do your seam allowance, and see, look, I didn't have to come in contact with the vinyl. I just did it from the back side like that. And yes, this does get a little flared sometimes, mainly because I had already unzipped it. I can probably kind of push it like that a little bit, but it's going to be fine. All right, so now we're going to start from the back, right sides together. I need to get my zipper pull out of the way. 1/4 inch seam, because we make this for 1 3/8 inch bias. Lift my presser foot up, kind of ooch, ooch, ooch around the corner. And when you lay all your fabric on here, make sure there's no threads or anything inside there. They really show up, you guys. I've had to reject things from our sewer or sewers like that have sewn things for us and said, sorry, you know, like I'm not paying for that because there's thread in there. I'm harsh, you guys. But you know, people pay a lot of money, and that little thread would just drive me crazy if I had gotten that. All right, you see all this messy stuff? We're just gonna make all that disappear now. We're gonna trim it down to the 1/4 inch seam. Really, you just need to guess where that is around the corners, because the binding is gonna pull up. It's not going to lay flat there. If it's laying flat there, it's going to be really tricky to sew later on. Like I say, when I attach the binding, I like to just gently pull it a little bit. That way, when I turn it to the other side, it just magically wants to become the binding I envisioned it to be. I've tricked it. Okay, so see, now I pull it to the right side, and it's already turning. Like, it's already like, ooh, I want to be binding. You know what I mean? Okay, so I'm going to trim this down a little bit right here, because when I'm near those teeth, it can get really thick. So you really want to make sure you only have a 1/4 inch seam allowance there. You can use wider binding. Just make sure you increase your seam allowance if you want it to finish wider. And I fold it so that it goes just past my first stitching line. Here's my first stitching line. So I fold it so it goes just past that. And then I'm going to stitch it to the right of that first seam, or on top of it. And that way I'll know that all of my stitching will land on the binding on the other side. And this is where my awl is really handy, because bias is stretchy. So even though, look, it's kind of shallow there, it's going to be fine. I can pull it over. I'm not forcing anything. The binding wants to do it. It's why we cut it on the bias, which is the 45-degree angle up to the length grain. Then it's stretchy. I kind of like these two colors together. It looks kind of cute. It's so cheerful, you know? All right. So this is why I don't unzip my zipper, because see, that makes that tape go kind of funny, but look, it's fine now. Okay, let's see. Yeah, he really hated this color. We were like, boys and girls love this color. You're crazy. I don't know what he had against Pepto-Bismol, but he called that color that. And we were like, it's like bubblegum pink. We would have to like rebrand pink to him all the time. I don't know what he was thinking. All right, so when I do my last stitch, and see, look, my binding all landed on the bias tape. And remember my other one, how I got the stitching on the case there? Which one was that? Was it this one? See, it's always where the zipper coil is, right? Remember I said you have to kind of fight with it a little bit. That's why you really want to make sure your seam allowances is no more than the 1/4 inch you're going to use. And even though our binding is 1 3/8 inch, we use a 1/4 inch seam allowance, because you use a quarter, that's a half, and then you're going to turn it under a 1/4 and a 1/4, that's another half. But that other 3/8 you need to kind of, you need to go around the thickness of the case, and it's more like a fat 1/4 inch seam allowance by the time you're done, because you've trimmed a little bit as well. Okay, so I do my last seam from the back to the front again. I hang it off 1 inch. I wrap it around, and I kind of pull it snug. Back tack. Stick to my 1/4 inch seam, or for me, I just use the width of my presser foot. Need to push my pole out of the way. And see, you see how these are coming? The little ripple, can you see that? That's what I'm talking about. That's why we always make sure this is taut across the back, so I get the least amount of that as possible. I hang the binding. I'm kind of tugging it. I hang it off 1 inch, and then I cut it off. You see it bounced back. Now I wrap it to the front, pull it really tight, like that. And I'm going to trim a little bit of that. I don't know why I'm getting all these threads. This fabric is obviously a little bit shreddier, but it's all going to get enclosed in here. So now I pull it straight up, and then we're going to do the envelope folding thing. So we fold that corner down so the fold lines up with the top of the case, and then we just roll hem it like usual. Fold, fold, like that. And so there's one of my pet peeves, that little tail fold of creeping out there, so I'm going to cover it up and secure it. That's another thing I'll reject a case for. I'm like, nope, sorry, I don't like seeing raw edge. Because we had a little factory helping us. Like, no, that's not okay. See, there it is again. Cover it up, then I secure it. And I ran out of bobbin. Why didn't you guys tell me I ran out of bobbin? Usually I hear it. But I always have one winding. I just put it back on here. That's the beauty of an industrial machine. I was at the fabric store the other day, and they were talking about a like a bigger bobbin, which is nice. Yeah, Maria. Now, I always sew a tiny bit when I change my bobbin, because see how messy that is? I don't want that to be on my case. So does that mean that I ran out No, I actually ran out perfectly on my, so this was my last spot that I sewed. That was lucky. Sometimes I forget to go check like where I ran out. All right, let's do that again. It's already pre-sewn. It's like better than ironed. It knows exactly what I want it to do now. There we go. Trim my thread. It's totally different when it's all sewn, isn't it? It's pretty cute though. So what's that? Just a loose thread. All right. That one came out really nice back here. This is always my trouble spot. It looks cute though. Let's do one more. I'm gonna have to come up with some new ones on Saturday. You didn't know Maria was there, Brooke. That's funny. Maria was the first one here today. There's like a spindle back here. That's what I'm aiming for. Kind of holds my binding back there. It's kind of neat. Like a lot of people who have these machines don't even know what that's for, and it's for like elastic or webbing, whatever you want to put back there. All right, so I'm just going to sew this one through. You guys know how to do this now. And if you're just joining us, I sewed a few of these at the beginning, and I gave some tips on like cutting and using like a store-bought zipper. Since this was designed for our kit, which comes with like a couple of zippers, some stiffener, and some vinyl. And but we know that you're gonna want to make more, and you're gonna have to buy those things. Thanks, Brooke. From the store. So those zippers are a little different. And so I give you the adjustment for buying if you're using a store-bought zipper. And this is a free pattern download right now if you sign up for the newsletter. I'm pretty sure there's a link in the description of this video that we're streaming. Like after we're done, it's going to upload. All right, do we want this one on the front? Or this one on the front? I kind of like that. I'm doing the same fabric front and back. See, it's totally different. You can just do whatever you want. Okay, I'm going to make my Notions case sandwich. Get rid of these threads, right? Otherwise, you're fired. I'll let you sew a pocket on crooked, but I'm not going to let you put a thread between the fabric and the stiffener. Okay, so when your zipper's hanging off, you're going to line up your vinyl. Just like this. This one's really cute. I really love this. I might keep this one myself. All right, I'm going to pull this. I'm pulling this bottom fabric really taut. Just like that. And get rid of this thread. So Saturday, I'll sew a few more of these. I know there's a few people joining the stream this week since we sponsored the Love to Sew podcast, which is really awesome. And welcome. I'm so glad to have you guys here. Make sure you sign up on the newsletter. You can get the free patterns, but you can also get updates on the stream schedule so you can kind of know what I'm going to be sewing. And also, when I live stream, it all gets uploaded. So I know that's a big chunk of a video to watch, but you can pause it, fast forward, you can do whatever you want. And you can rewatch it over and over if you happen to be sewing something similar or the same thing. So that might be helpful. And then you can follow us on Instagram, SewSewLive, and My day job is Chicken Boots, and I have a website, chickenbootsusa.com. You can see that's what I get up to mostly. So this is my side gig. This is not my full-time gig. It feels like it sometimes. I'm having so much fun with this. I'm really trying to not neglect my day job, which would be impossible to do because it's quite demanding. But I really I've been really interested in like sewing with people live and seeing, you know, what people are up to, what they want. I make tons of mistakes on stream. This is not a like perfect how-to to do anything. My chat has laughed at me before when I've forgotten how to sew something. I have made really bad mistakes, dumb mistakes, because they're just like, it's just we all do it. Like everybody makes mistakes when they sew every day, and I'm no exception to that. And I'm just more about creating a community of people that want to hang out with others that love to sew, want to figure things out, and we're all in it together. We're all learning all the time. That's what I've learned over the years, is that I'm never done learning. And, you know, I've definitely sewed just kind of a little bit of everything in my life over the years, you know. Especially as I was honing my skills, I would get into like certain niches like folkwear patterns or modern stuff or Japanese stuff or couture things, finishing techniques, hand sewing techniques, which I absolutely hate. I know people laugh at me for. I hate hand sewing. So I've done a little bit of all of it, but then I became a bag maker. Even though I came from the garment industry doing pattern drafting for all kinds of stuff, like everything you can imagine practically. I did everything but make an astronaut suit. And I really love making patterns, and I love sewing, and I love the technical side, like the engineering side of it. I'm not so much a big fan of the coming up with a whole line of clothing designs-wise, because I like what I like. I'm not really interested in directing trends. I'm just more interested in figuring things out and how to do it the best way possible. It's kind of my focus. And I think over the years, like I've really gravitated towards really structured things, a tiny bit heavy duty stuff like bags and things. And, you know, I do like sewing things like jeans and button shirts and things that have maybe a tricky detail, but maybe the rest of it's kind of simple. Like Charlie Kaftan has this little like inset, you know, and then all the rest of it's a breeze, you know. I kind of like, that's kind of my style. But I'm super into, see, here's my trouble spot. Sewing whatever you guys want to make, because I really, like, if I don't know how to do it, let's figure it out together. Like, I'm really into that. And I will totally sew just about anything you guys want. I've done menswear. I've done tons of children's wear, started in children's wear. My child, it would not let me sew for her, really. At this age, she is not little anymore. She's bigger than me. So, but I would still do that, you know. And if you guys see anything you're interested in, you're just not quite sure you want to commit to it, email me, sewsolive@gmail.com, or comment on Instagram, or send me a message somehow, and I'll check it out. I'll check out the pattern and stuff, so, because I'm into it. And I really don't need a new garment every week, you guys, because I don't need any more clothes, you know. So, yeah, me too, Maria. What a nice surprise. This is actually my favorite one of the day. Let's look at them all. Did we make 4? I thought we made one more. I just made 4, yeah. Look how different they are. Ooh, look at the back. Kind of want to go like this. Very cool. You might see these for sale on the website soon. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to go check on my parents. I can see my phone keeps lighting up. I'm a little worried about them. They're evacuated for a fire, and it's pretty bad out there. And, of course, it's windy, and it hasn't been windy in weeks. Of course it's windy, right? So I'm going to go check on them. And that bias is flash. Was that like a new hip term, Brooke? That bias is flash. Ooh. I'm going to have to start using that. So I hope I see you Saturday. Try and send an email out kind of welcoming everybody, and I really loved having you here. So consider creating an account or a channel. Thanks, Maria. So that you can chat with us, because it's really fun when you can harass me, heckle me, you know, cheer me on. All that is totally welcomed. And I love it when you guys talk to each other and talk about your projects and stuff. So find me on Instagram, sign up for the newsletter, and I will hopefully have this pattern. Hopefully everything's okay in our world and I can kind of finish this pattern. And then it'll be uploaded soon. And I'm going to figure out how to get the download to everybody. Maybe via newsletter, because I know how to do that. Or maybe sitting on the Chicken Boots website. So, all right, you guys, have a fabulous day. Take care, and thank you for tuning in. I'm Sarah, and I really appreciate you coming. So I'll talk to you soon. Bye, guys.